This is Chapter 8 of The Guardian of Ailos. The next morning, Nelson woke to a salty, smoky, greasy kind of smell. The sensation of warm drops of sunshine kissed his cheeks as he listened to the soothing crackle of a fire. He wanted it to last forever. There's nothing quite like the feeling of serenity, when all of your worries are swallowed up in the pleasures of the present. It didn't last long. Something both slimy and gritty fell on his forehead. His face scrunched and cringed at the sensation, and when he opened his eyes, a blurry furball greeted him. "Yuck!" he shouted, sitting up and wiping the slime off his face. He almost forgot about their pet otter thing. The fact that he still couldn't quite pinpoint what it was made the slobber on his hand that much more repulsive. Both Mina and Sid were at the back of the church laughing. Great, he thought. The butt of another joke. Nelson grabbed his glasses and put them on. The furball phased into focus. Harold, the ground otter, wagged the back half of his body like a puppy waiting for a treat. "He wants a pet from you," Mina said. Nelson furrowed his brow and looked down at the proud marmot. "You can talk to it too?" "He," it hummed. "It's a he," Sid reminded him. "Right. You can talk to him too?" The creature stood up straight with its paws on its hips, the tip of its nose almost reaching the top of Nelson's thigh. "Seems like it. I like it. I do," Mina sang, swaying on her haunches. Weird. Nelson flicked more slobber off of his hand and wiped away the rest on his shirt. The marmot hummed. Nelson stuck out his hand to pet the little marmot, but Harold grabbed and sniffed Nelson's fingers, recoiling at the smell. The sound of chuckles came from across the room. "What? It's your slobber," Nelson said. He rolled his eyes and took back his hand. "Fine, no pets for you." Harold hissed, and then scurried over to where Mina and Sid were giggling. "I don't get it," Nelson whispered. "What did I do?" "Come on over now," Sid called out. "Come get some breakfast. We made—" Sid looked at Mina. Mina just shook her head and mouthed, "You don't want to know." "Well," Sid continued, "we made breakfast. Anyway, we have a long day ahead of us. There's a hidden island Mina was just telling me about. Sounds like it could be where the other locket is." Nelson made his way over to the fire and sat down. "Mina, what happened to your eye?" Nelson asked. "Was that from last night?" He didn't remember her having a large scar on her face before, but then again, it was dark and he was tired. Mina brushed her hair down over the large red scar that passed through her eye. "Oh, yes, from last night. Those dreaded worms. It's a shame, really. This was my good one." Mina forced a smile, but Nelson could tell that she felt uncomfortable talking about it. Strange, he thought. It doesn't look that bad. How did it heal so quickly? "Eat, eat, eat," Mina blurted out. "Need the strength," she nodded. "Long day ahead of us." Nelson focused in on the spit with unrecognizable meat turning over an open flame. Below the twisting meat, a pan held what looked like eggs, but they definitely weren't the right color. He poked at them with a long two-pronged fork he found sitting next to the green-looking eggs. His breakfast looked nothing like it smelled. "If the island is hidden, how are we supposed to find it?" Nelson asked, reluctantly sniffing a piece of meat. Mina had her mouth stuffed, but she managed to blurt out a word. It sounded like "Womp." Nelson squinted in confusion and turned to Sid for a translation. Now Sid had her mouth full, and all she said was, "A mop." The two of them swallowed and started giggling again. "A map," Sid said. "Oh, a map. That's great." He looked around before lifting a piece of green eggs to his mouth. "So, where is it?" Sid pulled her tote bag up onto her lap. The book, of course, Nelson said. Remember the crazy light show we saw in the cave? Well, it was actually showing us a map of the three realms. But we didn't copy any of it, did we? No, but because the book is somehow connected to my locket, I am supposed to at least have access to the map. That's great, Nelson said, his mouth full of mystery meat. It tasted all right, despite its weird texture. The only thing is, Sid looked down at her chest, we have to find the right words. I see. And you don't happen to know those words yet, do you? Sid shook her head. But at least we have access to a ship, and someone who knows about the island. Wait, no. A ship? Nelson asked. No way, Sid. I don't do the ocean, you know that. It's the only way, Sid said, reaching out her hand to take hold of his. You'll be fine. Mina says she's sailed before, and you've seen her fight. You said it yourself. She was amazing. Very true, Sydney Sweet, very true. I've sailed the sea, I think. Or maybe a lake? Doesn't matter, a sail is a sail, and I indeed know how to. Mina stood at attention and saluted. Nelson buried his head in his hands. I think I'm going to be sick, Nelson said, clutching his stomach. He looked out over the railing of the ship, trying to grab hold of the horizon, hoping to maintain his composure. For a moment it worked, his gaze fixed on the fading cliffs. Again, the scene struck him with awe. Even while feeling stifled and claustrophobic on the unsteady ship, he had never been more free. Eventually, the cliffs dipped out of view, and the serene moment collapsed with them. A horrible, bubbly sensation took over, and everything he ate that morning came spewing out. Hey, Nelson, you okay? Shouted Sid, her attention stolen away from the book by the awful sound of Nelson's retching. She sat on the quarter deck, reading furiously, searching for the map. Nelson held up his thumb, despite being bent over the side rail, and raised it above his head. Another wave of nausea caught him before he could straighten up, and he sent another fountain of breakfast into the sea. The last of it, he hoped. Sid would tell him later that she felt horrible for laughing, but there was something about the way his leg would bend and kick that made him look cartoonish. His bouncy red hair didn't help. She did go over and check on him, but she made sure he was done first, of course. Oh, no, I'm sorry, she said, rubbing his back. Here, have some water. She reached into her tote for a water skin that Mina had given her. No, thank you, he said, holding up his hand to stop her. I just need to lay down. His face was paper white, and even his freckles looked like they were losing color. Any chance we're close? The look on Sid's face said it all. The tightened jaw and the sad eyes. Unfortunately not. But I want to ask you something. It's about Mina. Her tone switched from sad to optimistic. I really like her. Gosh, she reminds me of someone. I can't quite figure it out. What do you think? Nelson pondered. Well, she is very nice, but I don't know anyone that strange. Yeah, I guess, Sid chuckled. She does talk kind of funny, doesn't she? She sat down next to Nelson and scooted up against the side of the ship. Well, anyway, I did learn more about where we're headed, and I have good news. I'm almost positive the other locket is there. There being the hidden island? Nelson asked. Exactly. Here, look. She pulled out the book and opened it up in her lap. At first, I didn't understand it. But then, I remembered something my mom used to tell me. Nelson scooted over to her. About the map? He asked. No, well, sort of. You see, Sid looked over at Mina to make sure the two of them were out of sight. She looked back at Nelson and lowered her voice. I was trying to use the locket over there, but nothing was happening. It's supposed to be the key to reading the map. Okay, so why didn't it work? It did work, Sid said. But you just... Nelson's face scrunched in confusion. It seemed like every time Sid learned something new, he fell one step further behind. I thought that nothing was happening, but then I remembered. My mom used to hold my locket up before I went to sleep and say to me, wear this on your heart to keep the Maker near. Hold it in your hand to light the way. When everything gets dark, the light will make it clear. A hidden path will keep you safe. Then she would kiss my cheek and turn off all the lights. So we need to... Nelson lingered on every word, waiting for his friend to help him out. None of this made any sense. But then again, his mom never told him stories like that. She just did her best to keep him fed. His dad was always the storyteller. Unfortunately, not the good kind. We need to find somewhere dark. Sid opened the book to a page with a map. The details were simple but effective. He saw the cliffs where they first arrived, and the town with its port. Some mountains were drawn to the right of the beach with the hidden door, and off to the left was a compass. He studied the map, looking for clues, but it wasn't until Sid raised the locket and covered the book with her hand that he saw something start to shift. In the shadow, a line glimmered. By the compass, a column of sparkling dots, like stars, started to appear. "Wait, what is that?" Nelson exclaimed. "Look, there!" "Shh," Sid hushed, looking over to make sure Mina didn't hear. "I might like her, but I don't quite trust her yet. She acts funny, and she keeps staring at my locket. Something isn't right." Nelson thought that was a little strange. Sure, Mina was eccentric, but she saved them, didn't she? And this morning, they seemed to be perfect friends. He decided not to question Sid. If he'd learned anything, she was worth trusting. Nelson lowered his voice. "You do see it too, though, right?" "I see it, and that's why tonight, when Mina's sleeping, I need your help. I want to trace it, just in case something happens to the book. I'm afraid it may be our only way to find the island and the other locket." Nelson nodded. As they sat there, huddled over the book and whispering, he couldn't help but feel that they were on the cusp of something big. The hidden island, the other locket, the secrets of Ailos. It was all starting to come together. But as he glanced over at Mina, who was still at the helm singing sea shanties to herself, he wondered about the strange woman's role in all of this. Why was she so obsessed with the locket? And why did she seem so familiar? Thanks for listening to Chapter 8 of The Guardian of Ailos. As a reminder, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment or come find us on Substack, and we'll be right back next week with Chapter 9.